To take a little deeper dive now into President Trump's postponed briefing at the White House and a push for no vacation until Congress passes his mega bill, we're joined this morning by Davidson political science professor Dr. Susan Roberts. Dr. Roberts, always a pleasure. Good morning.
Nice to be with you.
We've got a lot to unpack here. And so let's, before we get into sort of the war powers discussion with Congress, I want to go back to this meeting that was canceled yesterday. Certainly there's even a disagreement as to why that was canceled, right? Was it the White House not wanting to tell other lawmakers about what's going on in the Middle East? Or was it a fine line of they're waiting on more facts, they're waiting on more intel to be able to deliver exactly what's going on? What's your take on that?
Sure. I think it's not so much waiting for intel because that was there. It wasn't shared. I don't know why it would be shared more broadly and publicly. I think it's just seeing if it passes from attention and the news cycle goes on to something else in terms of the why and the where. I think most of the American public agree on the stakes, and they may agree on why this was so secretive and not shared.
Well, Dr. Roberts, to your point there, a lot of people in Congress obviously upset that they were not consulted about the strikes that happened over the weekend. We had our chief legal analyst saying that Article 2 in the War Powers Resolution talking about how the president, he says it was in his right to do what he did. But politically speaking, is this something that he should have brought up with Congress? Even if he has the right to do it, should he have done it?
Well, I think it's consistent with Trump's MO. You know, he doesn't share information. He doesn't define national emergency as many presidents have. National emergencies, Trump has been able to declare them in terms of immigration, purging administration and agencies. And so I think that declaring it to the leaders, I think there may be some misrepresentation about when the Democratic leadership knew about this. And I think that the bottom line is some existential, more or less, discussion of the War Powers Resolution is not as relevant as it might be. As your viewers probably know, that criticism of war efforts really center around, is it lengthy? Is it costly? Has there been loss of life? What are the goals? Is it, again, unpopular? And I think that Americans realized what the stakes were, and this was quick. It wasn't costly, no loss of life. So I think that the War Powers Resolution, while the constitutionality can be in question between declare war and wage war, this is not unique with President Trump in these times.
And to your point there, it's not unique. We've seen Democratic and Republican presidents use Article 2. My question to you is, we've seen impeachment efforts start and stop because there wasn't enough support there. Are lawmakers wasting their time worrying about Article 2 and instead not worrying enough about a big, beautiful bill that could possibly slash NPR, PBS, Medicaid, Medicare?
I do think there's more immediate attention to Iran and Midnight Hammer. I think that that was a success in some terms. In terms of the question of degree is less relevant as the fact it was carried out, no one was lost, it wasn't costly. But I think the one big beautiful OBBB is something that is of concern, but not immediate concern to the public. I think it's one of those, the president can't really legally hold Congress hostage, but it is one of those things that the devil's in the details. The goals are not clear. Congress is divided, and there is not bipartisan support. I will mention this. It really chafes me that you say, that people say, that not you, that there was bipartisan criticism of Trump's use of troops, or not troops, but in Midnight Hammer. You just can't take one member of Congress and cherry pick and say that it's bipartisan. It wasn't bipartisan. And I think also, too, that one big, beautiful bill is just too big and not incremental enough. And there's too much concern about what it does to the deficit. And I think there is bipartisan support on that measure.
Dr. Roberts, clearly right now there's not a lot of unity in Congress, especially when it comes to the war. Even in the last hour, the president is in the Netherlands talking NATO. There seems to be some unity there. All these countries saying, hey, we will pony up that 5% of our monthly, our GDP to be able to help for international security and taking care of our allies if we're attacked. Looking ahead at the bigger picture, what are some of the biggest challenges for our country when you're trying to balance our domestic needs, the big beautiful bill, along with international security and protecting our allies in the Middle East? What do you think the biggest challenge is for the next 6 months for our country?
Well, I think it's also international security, but I also think it's a question of instability. Trump's movements in the tariffs and the economy and threats have really introduced that in terms of many countries aren't willing to automatically say that the United States has a consistent policy, and they may be expecting something else that might not agree. What had happened if there had been an escalation of the war? That is a question. Was Trump lucky? And I think that there's a concern about that in terms of not where the stakes were, but how pivotal was this? Where were we at a tipping point?
All questions that deserve answers, and hopefully we'll get them. Dr. Susan Roberts, thank you as always for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.